little bit of a basic Zoom protocol. I know if you're in here before, you probably heard this, but please start your video. We want to create an engaging experience. We're going to have the option for breakout rooms, and we want to make sure everyone gets to see each other's faces. As much as we would love to have this in person, make this feel as in person as possible. And then please mute your microphones when you're not speaking. We will have the option for Q&A. So when it gets to that option, we may utilize the raise your hand option, and after calling some people out, we'll be able to utilize that for the one-on-one Q&A option. And then if you guys have any problems with audio, please reach out to Theo directly on chat. He has Tech Guy and as his name, and try to switch to phone audio. And please utilize the chat as much as possible for questions, comments, reactions. We want to see your guys' reactions. We want everyone to be as engaged as possible. We're excited to have you. And then, like we said, we're going to have some breakout rooms today. And if you've never used breakout rooms, you may see this little pop-up screen show up as we do them, and then you can press join and it'll take you to that breakout room. Today, we're going to use breakout rooms of 4 and 5 people. So the more engaged you are, you have your video on, you'll be able to connect with those people. You get to meet probably 20 or so new people during this event. So we're very excited for that. And with that being said, let's test out the breakout rooms right now. So in groups of 4 or 5, we're going to introduce ourselves, whether you're a professional or a student, name, hometown, major, or your background, and if you're a student, your year. And then a question to kick off the night. Who is a woman leader who inspires you and why? So Theo's going to go ahead and facilitate those, and we're all going to be able to meet a couple new people. At least one person new in your breakout rooms and learn a little bit about who inspires them. I know in my breakout room is a lot of family members that have pushed a lot of these BG-based female leaders to go further. So I'm sure a lot of people heard the same. So thank you guys all for sharing that. Getting to know each other. You'll get to learn a few new groups tonight. But before we dive into the event, we want to take a few moments to thank everyone involved in the planning process and the sponsorship. So the organizational sponsors, there was 5 organizations that from September to now have been working endlessly to get all this together. So Women in Business Leadership, Women in Technology, American Medical Women's Association, Women in Computing, and Feminist Organization of Rallying for Gender Equality, or Forge. And I want to thank everyone who's involved with those organizations, the advisors, the individuals who have come and spoke at meetings, given their opinion. It's been a long road, and we're very happy to get this on the road and have everyone here right now. So you have no idea how much this means to all of us. And I see a few smiling faces on Zoom right now. So thank you all for that. And then our event partners. So with that, one of the individuals who has helped a lot is Alex Falter, who is the president of Women in Business Leadership. And she's going to help me introduce some of the individuals that have made this event possible.
Thank you for the introduction page, and thank you all for being a part of this amazing event. So I'm going to go over our first sponsor, which is DHL Supply Chain. They are America's leader in contract logistics, providing customer-focused solutions to a wide range of industries, including automotive, consumer, retail, engineering, life sciences and healthcare, technology, and energy. DHL Supply Chain's skilled people make its customers more competitive by creating innovative logistics and supply chain solutions. They have over 25,000 employees in over 400 locations spread throughout the USA and Canada, with revenues just under $5 billion in America.
And then also we have Sleek Academy, which is a private K-12 grade charter school teaching science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics. And they do hands-on projects using project-based learning foundation, where the students are able to learn the concepts they teach, whether it's in everyday life or on an academic setting. And their goal is to help students become independent and confident, which is also to teach them to be productive as part of the community. And examples of projects from the students that they're currently working on is building a picnic table for the cocoon, building a bench for a local church, designing and constructing eco-friendly park for the community and building year-round, and then underground greenhouses to facilitate food and herb for local pantries.
Our next partner is Mannequin Smith Group. They are built on the foundation of relationships, technical skill, and leadership. People are the heart of their company, where knowledgeable and tech-savvy associates create the ability to positively impact the value of the projects. With nearly 350 employees across 14 offices in Ohio, Michigan, West Virginia, MSG is able to assign technical support and administrative staff with a variety of skills to assist on projects. Their success is built on partnerships, detailed and process-oriented delivery of projects, and most plainly by living up to the one position that can be earned, being a trusted advisor to their customers.
And then next we have Owens Corning, which is a global building and industrial materials leader. And the company's 3 integrated businesses are dedicated to the manufacture and the advancement of a broad range of insulation, roofing, and fiberglass composite materials. Leveraging the talents of over 19,000 employees in 33 countries, Owens Corning provides an innovative products, manufacturing technologies, and sustainable solutions that address energy efficiency, product safety, renewable energy, durable infrastructure, and labor productivity. These solutions provide a material difference to the company's customers and make the world a better place. Based in Toledo, Ohio, the company posted 2019 sales of $7.2 billion. Founded in 1938, has been a Fortune 500 company for 65 consecutive years. For more information, please go to owenscorning.com.
Our next sponsor is Gartner, who is the world's leading research and advisory company and a member of the S&P 500. They equip business leaders with indispensable insights, advice, and tools to achieve their mission-critical priorities today and build the success of organizations of tomorrow. Their unmatched combination of expert-led and data-driven research steers clients toward the right direction on the issues that matter the most. They are a trusted advisor and an objective resource for more than 15,600 organizations in more than 100 countries across all major functions in every industry and enterprise size. To learn more about how they help decision makers fuel the future of business, visit Gartner.com. They are also hiring May 2021 graduates to join their sales team, and I'll drop Katie Dessler's email address in the chat if you want to apply.
Another one of our sponsors is PBE, Principal Business Enterprises. They manufacture high-performance absorbent products and footwear safety solutions with applications in healthcare, industrial processing, and at-home use. PBE is a family-owned small business with 2 locations in Northwest Ohio. Founded in 1961, PBE has maintained a mission to not only be a principle-centered business that uplifts the lives of those it serves through developing an exceptional workplace environment for its associates and innovating products that improve the quality of life for its customers.
Cooper Tire and Rubber Company is our last sponsor for today, and they are the parent company of a global family of companies that specializes in the design, manufacture, marketing, and sales of passenger car, light truck, medium truck, and motorcycle racing tires. Cooper's headquarters is in Findlay, Ohio, with manufacturing, sales, distribution, technical, and design operations within its family of companies located in more than a dozen countries across the world. Cooper employees live the company's purpose, which states, "Everyone deserves to travel through life's journeys with confidence, and Cooper is there in every turn." This includes the Cooper Women's Network, an employee resource group that works to bring Cooper women together through peer networking and development events. Cooper Tire and the Cooper Women's Network are proud to be sponsors of today's program. A big thank you goes out to all event sponsors. Without them, this event would not be possible.
And then with that being said, we're going to kick off the main portion of our event. We have an amazing keynote that will be speaking on well-behaved women, seldom make history, how to break your glass ceiling. Andy Donovan is the SVP of Carhartt Company Gear Strategy and Customer Engagement at Carhartt. Andy has been with Carhartt for 6 years and currently leads the Carhartt Company Gear team, business, corporate strategy, and consumer engagement teams. She led the launch of the CCG business focused outfitting hardworking people at their workplace in Carhartt. A couple of recent milestones included outfitting 28,000 people below the wing United Airlines teams in Carhartt and launching CCG's direct-to-business website, making it easy for uniformed decision makers to purchase for their people. In addition, Andy is responsible for the strategy and growth agenda for Carhartt, as well as delivering the best in-class experiences to the Carhartt customer engagement team. Prior to joining Carhartt, Andy served as a managing director at Root Inc., a business strategy consultancy where she successfully guided companies in the creation of their consumer experiences. Prior to her work at Root, Andy served as SVP of Merchandise and Strategic Planning, as well as VP of Finance at Borders Group, Inc. Her work experience also includes multiple leadership positions at Gap, Inc., including Director of Gap Brand Finance and Marketing Effectiveness. Andy earned her Master's in Business Administration from the University of Michigan, and she earned her Bachelor's in Science and Accountancy from Indiana University. In addition, Andy is a certified public accountant and began her career at PricewaterhouseCoopers in Chicago and San Francisco. Andy, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Paige. That was a very nice introduction. I am going to just figure out how to get going on sharing my screen here. All right. Okay, well, thank you everyone for having me. It's a pleasure to be here celebrating International Women's Day with all of you at Carhartt. Today we had a lot of celebrations happening. We had an event today and an event on Friday. So I love this day and I'm happy to be here and talk to you. So first, I thought I'd tell you a little bit about me beyond the resume. And to know me really is to know my family. And family is everything to me. And starting with this left picture, a quick story. These are my one brother who's a year younger than me in the hat in this bottom picture, and then my cousins on my mom's side, and we grew up very close. This top picture was taken in the late 80s, and this last one was the last time we were all together in person a couple years ago. And the reason why I wanted to share this picture with you, because in thinking about great women and the role models that I grew up with, a couple of them are in this picture. My little cousin Kimmy, who is just an amazing woman, a free spirit, creative, and has done just some really cool things in her life. And my older cousin Karen. So I think the fact that she was older, I always looked up to her. And the tie-in is that she is a graduate of Bowling Green. And actually, when I was in high school, around the time when this top picture was taken, I was a blonde back then. My parents said, I think you should go visit Karen at BGSU so you can really just get a sense for the college experience. And I did. And just a great memory was sitting with her in her dorm room. And back then, this was, late 80s. And so we, no computers. And I remember she's flipping through this really huge book and just trying to figure out what does she want to do with her life. And she is just a really smart, funny, just dynamic person. And she went on to actually graduate and go to medical school and became a surgeon. And, today she's just a woman that I admire so much. She's a single mom running her own surgery practice outside of Cleveland. And so thought it was cool that even though I did not graduate from Bowling Green, my first college experience was with her back then. And then the middle pictures, this is my wonderful husband and partner in crime. We're a blended family. So these are his two sons biologically, my goofball son up there behind, and then my daughter here. So we have a lot of fun as a family. It's great. It's crazy household of raising 4 kids, and a fierce daughter. As you can see, she plays ice hockey. And then this is my extended family on the right. I am a person that loves gatherings. COVID's been a little tough for me. I have a lot of fun planning events. So this was our smaller family event over the holidays, and of course had to get matching pajamas. My husband plays in a band with my brother and my cousin, and my retirement plan is to be the band manager for him when I'm done with the corporate gig. And then these are our 2 French bulldogs, which I adore and obsess over. So a year ago, exactly, I was fortunate to attend and speak at an International Women's Day event, similar to this one. Are you guys getting feedback? Oh, it looks like it went away. And it was actually my last in-person event before COVID. So it was a really wonderful event. And I had the opportunity to meet this woman. She was actually the chief technology officer for Ford. And she handed me this book, and this book is called, as you can see, The Four Agreements, A Practical Guide to Personal Freedom. And what I really was intrigued by was it wasn't your typical business book, and I like the practical part of it. And so when Paige asked me to speak with you all today, I thought it would be kind of fitting to pay it forward from a year ago and share some of the wisdom I gained through reading this book over the last year. And just to note that this book was actually published a long time ago, back in 1997. And thinking back to that time in my career, I was 2 years into working with Price Waterhouse, living in Chicago, and made the decision to just up and move to San Francisco with Price Waterhouse, now Price Waterhouse Coopers, really just kind of for the fun of it. And so back then I could have really used this practical guide to personal freedom. And although the book is a little dated, I see a lot of commonality between some of the more current authors on leadership. And I recently attended an event with Brene Brown. And if you know her, she's a researcher, author, and professor. And she, over the course of her career, she studied hundreds of organizations. And at this event, she highlighted that, a couple of the keys to great leadership is to just develop a sense of self-acceptance and courage. And the one thing I thought was cool about her research was that she's actually found that courage is a skill that can be taught. And so I saw a strong connection between her research and what I'm hearing from sort of the more modern leaders of our time and this book. And kind of the further context of this book is that we all have self-limiting beliefs that rob us of joy. And in order to find true happiness, we must be ourselves and overcome our fears. And by adopting these 4 agreements, which we're going to talk through, we can all transform our lives and experience true freedom and happiness, which sounds pretty good to me. And so when upon reflection, when getting asked to talk about breaking glass ceilings, to me, the one common factor in my career was that being fearless and leading with courage and jumping in head first. Like when I've grown the most as a leader, I've jumped in head first to new opportunities, and solving new problems. And so I wanted to share with you, through the context of the 4 agreements, my journey to becoming fearless, and in the hopes that you take something away from my journey today. But first, I think it's important to talk about fear. The 4 agreements highlights that the seeds of fear set in with what the author refers to as the domestication of humans. It starts at a young age when we try to please our parents and our teachers. We pretend to be, at times, we pretend to be what we are not and fear being rejected. And that fear of being rejected becomes the fear of not being good enough. Then eventually we sometimes become someone that we're not. We simply become a little bit of a copy of our parents' beliefs, society's beliefs, or religious beliefs. And there's something in our minds that judge everybody and everything according to those beliefs. We judge and we're the victim of judgment. And sometimes, sometimes we tell ourselves we're not good enough, smart enough or attractive enough. And these judgments are all based on a belief system we didn't choose. But we press on, and sometimes those belief systems, I think, give us comfort. And so that's why I think that it takes great deal of courage to challenge your own beliefs and some of those maybe fear-based agreements we've made with ourselves. And at this point in history, it's more important than ever. This quote in the book really hit me, then I think is really relevant 24 years after it was written. And the author says, if we look at human society, we see a place so difficult to live in because it is ruled by fear. Throughout the world, we see human suffering, anger, revenge, addictions, violence in the street, and tremendous injustice. It may exist at different levels in different countries around the world, but fear is controlling the outside dream. And so I firmly believe that challenging our own ingrained beliefs and overcoming fear will not only bring you joy in life, but it'll also help you make some positive change in your organizations and maybe even change the world. So today I'm going to utilize this framework of 4 agreements as a way to highlight moments in my career when I've lived up to the agreements and I think most importantly, when I didn't live up to them. And my hope is that you, again, take away some insights from my journey. And maybe you think back to this discussion as you move forward on your own journey to breaking glass ceilings. And just a disclaimer, I am in no way an expert in this teaching, and I am not endorsed by the author. So I just thought this would be kind of a fun framework to tell my story. Okay. Agreement number 1 is be impeccable with your word. Speak with integrity, say only what you mean. Avoid using the word to speak against yourself or to gossip about others. Use the power of your word in the direction of truth and love. So I'm going to go through sort of when I didn't live up to the agreement first, and then talk about it a time when I did. And so this first one was thinking back to when I was in finance at Borders. So Borders, for those of you that may not know, was a bookstore, big national chain bookstore, global, that eventually went out of business. And at this time, we were far from going out of business. So we were doing pretty well, coming off of strong performance in the early 2000s. And we had launched this initiative to modernize a number of our stores. So we called them concept stores at the time. And it was my job in finance to measure the results of this initiative. So we invested millions of dollars into these stores. And we had an upcoming leadership meeting with the entire executive leadership team and a broader group of leaders. And I was asked to present the results to this group. And this is definitely when I did the analysis. I didn't take as much time with it. Maybe it was because I had a lot going on. And I didn't really understand the whys. So the results, the results were bad, like they were horrible. And instead of kind of being impeccable with my word and really getting to the truth of what was happening, I just went into this big meeting, and it was so cringy, like I'll never forget it. And I basically delivered the bad news and sort of had a drop the mic kind of moment. I remember looking out at the audience and seeing everyone's faces in shock. And I think it was also a good lesson for me. And when you're delivering bad news, it's probably a good idea to maybe get with a few people before a large meeting to share that bad news. And so, I think the learning is like I could have spent a little more time deeply understanding why we didn't have the results that we desired, and potentially maybe co-creating some solutions, with the team responsible ahead of the meeting to share. And so I think that's it's an example of with my role, there was power, and I didn't use that power for good. I just kind of dropped the bomb and walked away. And at Carhartt, we have this leadership competency around being authentic. We call it being authentic. And one key factor we highlight is to be mindful of our impact and intentional with our actions and reactions. And being impeccable with your word, and I would add being thoughtful with your word, is just, I think, one critical way to live up to that competency. An example of when I actually think I did a decent job of living up to this was actually when I was young in my career, out in San Francisco and with Price Waterhouse auditing an ad agency. And the audit, the job of an auditor is really to, get into companies and check and find mistakes, quite frankly, and really kind of scour, the books to understand what's going on, and ultimately, identify any adjustments that need to be made and sign off. And the first day on the audit, I remember walking into the most senior guy in the ad agency, and I could tell he was extremely nervous. I'm like, here I am, a 20 something, walking into his office. I'm like, why is this guy so nervous, and he's sweating? And so it kind of put my antenna up. And so then I went through the audit, and actually did discover a revenue recognition issue. And it wasn't criminal. Like, it was just an ad agency that I think prioritized creative talent over accounting talent, which is normal. And it was just sloppy accounting. And so, but knowing and, kind of being empathetic to the managing partner, I actually spent the time, structure my message and, talk about the issue, but talk about how we resolve it, and just, was more careful with my words back then. And so I think in general, as I've taken on greater leadership responsibility, I've realized the importance of this agreement, speaking the truth, and speaking impeccable about the truth and getting to the truth, is how you get to the root of solving problems. And so, and also thinking about how, I structure feedback is critical. So I spend more time ensuring I've got strong, clear communication than even I did, 5 years ago. Okay. Agreement number 2, don't take anything personally. Nothing others do is because of you. What others say and do is a projection of their own reality, their own dream. When you are immune to the opinions and actions of others, you won't be the victim of needless suffering. Don't take anything personally, because by taking things personally, you set yourself up to suffer for nothing. As you make a habit of not taking anything personally, you won't need to place trust in what others say or do. You're never kind of responsible for the actions of others. You're only responsible for the actions of you. So this is like, I still tell myself this all the time. I mean, anytime I get constructive feedback, I have don't take it personally going on is a repeat message in my brain. But when I was early in my career, I would take feedback so hard. And I honestly was probably too concerned about getting to the next promotion, all about me back in those early days. And I had several times when I would make a mistake and the constructive feedback would literally take me down for days. I would obsess and make excuses as to why things didn't go right. And so one example, again, was in accounting, and I was auditing a big public company in Chicago. And I was responsible for one financial footnote, which doesn't sound like a big deal, but when you're a public company and your whole job as an auditor is to make sure that footnote's right, I totally missed it. It was completely messed up, and I just missed it, and it was inaccurate. So, but instead of taking the time to kind of, as a learning moment, move on, I obsessed about it. I tried to overly manage the narrative around it. And so, on the flip side, when I have lived up to this, I guess on a much larger scale, I was one of my first projects at Carhartt when I was brought on was to modernize our distribution center. So putting in a ton of automation, a huge multi-million-dollar investment, super complex project, the most complex project I've ever been a part of. And I knew that going into something this large and complex, there was going to be things that went wrong. Well, I mean, pretty much everything went wrong that could go wrong. The whole thing went off the rails, and we got very behind schedule with supplier delays. And it was a mix of, some stuff was a little bit out of my control, but there was stuff in my control. And the timing was already tight because we were trying to hit our seasonal peak in that year of, obviously the clothing business, it's all very seasonal. And we have, one time a year where we're shipping at a very, very high level. So we kind of manage the distribution center around hitting that level. And it was coming up really quick. And if I didn't hit my deadline, I would have had to delay the whole project 1 year. And so this was as I had my back up against the wall. And, but in this case, instead of obsessing about like, oh, and there was chatter all around Carhartt, or, oh, Andy's not gonna pull this off, but I kind of like let that noise just go out of my brain and really just focused on solutions and got with the team. This is actually our main distribution centers in Kentucky, went down there almost every other week and rolled up my sleeves and found things that we could actually get going, with the supplier earlier. And while the whole thing didn't go live, I got a good portion of it to go live in that year. So I think the lesson was just, just dig in, don't take it personally, just do the work that needs to be done. Agreement number 3, don't make assumptions. Find the courage to ask questions and to express what you really want. Communicate with others as clearly as you can to avoid misunderstanding, sadness, and drama. And with just this one agreement, you can completely transform your life. On this one, the author emphasizes, if you don't understand something, it is better for you to ask and be clear instead of making an assumption. The day you stop making assumptions, you will communicate cleanly and clearly, free of emotional poison. Without making assumptions, your word becomes impeccable. So hopefully you can kind of see how these sort of build on each other. I literally tell myself this one every day. This has been the toughest one for me to stick to of all the agreements. And I have so many examples of when I've made assumptions about people and situations. It's tough to pick just one example, especially when I get really stressed and I've got a lot going on. I'll just skip the question asking and just make an assumption and just say, you know, XYZ is going wrong because so-and-so doesn't know what they're doing. Or a lot of times on the flip side, for me, I will see something with rose-colored glasses. Well, this leader has everything under the control all the time. I'm going to assume that everything's going fine. So sometimes I go into the extremes. And I think instead of taking the time to truly understand, sometimes I just jump in and start doing and trying to fix, and that fix goes in the wrong direction. And so, and then what happens is the fix becomes a Band-Aid instead of a true solve. So this is like so critical and has been so important, especially as I've progressed, you know, throughout my career. Some of the best examples when I've lived up to it is when I don't make assumptions about people. And one example was with my current team, that I have a leader on my current team that led and launched my sign back here, the launch of Carhartt Company Gear, which is a new business for Carhartt. And she, 3 years ago, you know, she was in strategy. So she was on my other team and worked on the strategy with me for this business that we launched. And she spent, you know, prior to 3 years ago, her entire career in research and strategy. And you know, a critical, you know, she identified this critical element to launch our online business. And I think a natural tendency may have been, you know, we're launching an online business and she hasn't done that before, you know, so maybe we should go outside to get someone who has. But instead of going there, I spent time getting clarity for her interests and her leadership capabilities. I came to, you know, understand through working together, she was exceptional at navigating ambiguity. She was good at asking all the right questions to vet our internal capabilities before moving forward with a plan. But most importantly, she had a really good grasp of where her experience gaps existed and then how to fill them in with expertise outside of Carhartt. And since then, you know, she's hired a great team, you know, with the right experience. And we actually launched the website early to the marketplace, the beginning of 2020, which was a crazy year to launch during a pandemic, and you know, actually exceeded our expectations for the year, which is just remarkable. But the cool thing is, it's like the most rewarding thing is that she got to realize a new career opportunity. And, you know, she continues to inspire a great team doing, you know, great work, supporting the future growth for Carhartt. So it's just this wonderful win-win all around, but not making assumptions about, you know, the fact that she just had this prior experience and that was going to be what she needed to continue to do going forward was really key to being successful there. And then the fourth and final agreement is always do your best. Your best is going to change from moment to moment. It will be different when you are healthy as opposed to sick. Under any circumstance, simply do your best and you avoid self-judgment, self-abuse, and regret. And you know, the first three agreements will only work if you do your best. And if you always do your best, there's no way you can judge yourself. And if there's no way you can judge yourself, there's no way you can suffer from guilt, blame, and self-punishment. And at various points, you know, in my life, I've overcommitted myself to doing too many things at once. I get passionate about taking on new challenges, and sometimes I jump right in without completely thinking about the implications to myself or to others. And I think for me, not an example of when I didn't do my best was I didn't create conditions to do my best. And so this was about 12 years ago. I was newly promoted from the VP of Finance to the SVP of Merch Planning and Supply Chain. And so it was a whole new discipline for me. And it was a relatively high pressure time at Borders because at this time we were teetering on the edge of bankruptcy. And I was jumping into an area of the business I needed to learn quickly and make swift changes. And I earned this promotion while also in the midst of the executive MBA program at U of M. I had my 3-year-old daughter at home. And then I became shortly thereafter, I became pregnant with my son, but after getting over a miscarriage. So it was a super emotional, high pressure time. And so I didn't create conditions to be my best. I was kind of like not doing great in school, not being a great mom, and not being there for my company at this really critical moment. So the lesson there is like I suffered all this unnecessary guilt for it all, so I took it all personally, too. So definitely a good lesson there. Now, when I've lived up to it in more recent years, I become more proactive about managing and setting clear expectations about what I'm going to get after and what I'm not. I'm fortunate that at Carhartt, I've been able to do a lot of different things since I've been there in my 6 years. And I'm a person that can take on a lot. I have a lot of energy and I love new things. But there's certain things now that I talk with my boss about. I say, okay, this part of my job responsibilities, this is how much effort I'm going to spend there. And that just kind of needs to run as it will. My energy is going to be spent on these other top 2 things. And so, I've been just more proactive at defining my best. And as a result, I've been happier. It also helps. I have a great, amazing, the president of CART is a woman. She's the first female president of the company. And so I have a great supportive boss, which also helps a ton. And the culture at Carhartt's wonderful. In closing, I believe the key to breaking glass ceilings is being fearless. And the key to being fearless is to truly accept the real you and be willing to challenge your own beliefs. I believe that if more people live up to these 4 agreements on their own journeys to becoming fearless, or our organizations and the world would become a much better place. So that's what I got. And I'll open it up for questions. Yes, I see a hand. I don't know if anyone.
Andy, do you mind if we stopped your screen share so that
yes,
folks that are on smaller screens can see one another and you can see them maybe?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, Rose is the first one with their hand up, so go ahead.
Hi, thank you so much for sharing that. That is so inspirational. And I have a question for you. So, of all the advices, right? So like the last one you said, always try your best.
Mm-hmm.
We often try to try our best. Like we also like become the victim of becoming like a perfectionist.
Yes.
So that being said, like how do you think like you find like a practical balance in those 2 like scenarios?
Yeah, I mean, I think, like I said, it's like, to me, it's really thinking more strategically about what is your best for that time in your life, for that time in your level of experience, and setting your own expectations for you, like really knowing yourself. I think I'm a big believer too in strengths, and knowing your strengths, and strengths really, for the most part, like, it's a mix of talent and then things that you work on. The talent that you bring to the table usually stays pretty consistent throughout your whole career, like there's the Gallup Strengths Finder, like my number 1 is activator. And that's probably why I've done a big variety of different things in my career. And so I know that going into situations, like what I bring and what my best is bringing that activator, which is like inspiring a group around a vision and getting going and getting stuff done, And so I think it's a combination of really knowing yourself and your strengths and defining your personal best for where you are in your evolution of your career. I'm a woo. I love woo. I have the woman I referenced in my story, she's woo. So I work well with woos. I'm not woo, but I need woos around me. All right, let's see. I got to get the chat visible here.
Has her hand up. So
yeah.
if you want to
Okay.
go question.
Hannah?
Yes. So I just was wondering, as a female leader, what is the greatest barrier that you came across and how did you overcome that?
Wow, it's great question. To me, and if noticed, I think a lot of times initially when I heard, okay, breaking glass ceilings, I have this tendency, because I've heard all these great stories from other women about these dramatic moments that have happened in their career where they've stood up for themselves, or injustice of other women. And while I've had some of those moments, to me, that hasn't been the harder thing to get right. And I think early in my career, and it was, the mid 90s, and I'm working in finance back then, was very male dominated. And so I was always one of a couple women. And my mode back then was to adapt. And just to be honest with you, like, I literally just tried to be one of the guys. And now my new lens is like, no, that's not the right way. That's not the right leadership style for me. And the sort of the vulnerable leader, the collaborative leader, that's who I want to be. And I'm behind those early days, the macho leader was it was a different version of leadership. So for me, the bigger barrier has been for me to just find my way and lead on a new path of a leadership style that I think the world is coming around to, but I think many organizations still, haven't figured that one out. So that's the bigger barrier, has just been finding my voice, finding that way, and leading in the way that I think is the right way.
That's amazing. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I have a question if while everyone else is curating theirs. So I know that you're part of the Riveters at Carhartt, which is a female professional development group.
Mhm.
So one question that we always have, at least in women in business leadership meetings, is how do you, as university women, some advice to us, how do you help support other women while also breaking your glass ceiling? Not just being all about you, not kicking someone else down as you're going, but how do you create that network? Some tips and tricks for us that are going into the workforce pretty soon.
That's a really great question, Paige. Fortunately, I work in a company that is very pro woman, and half of the senior leadership team are women, which is really great. So I have a lot of great examples, and I do think that giving each other a voice is important. So like one small thing that I've done, and you've probably talked about this before. And there's this, I listened to a speaker a couple years ago that talked about the phenomenon of men talking over women. And it is a thing. I mean, and it's still a thing. And I still, even though Carhartt's way better than a lot of places I've been, it still happens. And so what I, try to do to support the women I work with in a meeting is just, if they're getting talked over, I don't let it happen, and I pull them into the conversation. So I think that's one just small way to support each other. And I think that you just have to have a mindset of like, I think that in the 90s, I think there was this perception of and reality that there's only a few spots for the women at the top. Well, that's just a bunch of BS. There's no reason why all the executives at the top can't be all women, So I think not having this mindset of like, I got to take someone down because we're all the women are in competition with each other. I think that's, maybe that still exists. I hope it doesn't, but just changing that mindset is key.
Absolutely. Thank you. And the
Yeah.
next Prudence has her hand up. So if you want to go and ask your question, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Talking about women in leadership and at the top, unfortunately, we are not able to get the numbers at a certain point in time. All the time, we have 1 or 2, 3 women at the top. So for the women at the top, the few ones at the top, what would you suggest they do so as to encourage more of them to join? Or maybe if you are on your way out, how do you, in the words of the now vice president, how do you open the door and make sure that you are not the first person make sure that you are not the last, actually. You're not the last to go through that door.
Yeah, great question. I think honestly, it's about being intentional about it. It's about, it's many things. It's not like one silver bullet that's going to make it happen. It's, I'm a big believer. We have, the Riveters, which was named after Rosie the Riveter, is a resource group. We have resource groups for, LGBTQ plus, for Black, Hispanic, like every resource group. And so I'm a big believer in that, because that creates a community inside your organization that promotes advancement, directly mentoring. But most importantly, I think pulling women in when they don't feel like they even, like, giving them a seat at the table, literally. And so, I think strategically about the strong women that I work with, and I'm intentional about making sure that they're pulled into the conversation, to give them opportunity, and so I think it's just, and I do believe the sort of leadership style that I hopefully got across with all of you, that's that more of a leader in service of others. That example, I think that's the true way. If you truly have the mindset of being in service of others first instead of yourself, and you have this, goal to bring more people in, then it creates staying power, because it becomes a part of the culture and a part of what we hold up as the gold star in our organizations, and so that the legacy lives on. But it's not, it's definitely not easy, because the numbers are still not great, so obviously, we still have a lot of work to do.
Then does anyone else have a question? You can put it in the chat, you can raise your hand. I have a few, but okay. Rose, you can go ahead, and then Alex right after.
Okay, sorry, I have one more question. So like what stood out to me was when you said you tried to become like one of the guys, and when you first started out, and that usually is, I don't want to say like a problem, but like with most women go through it. I did, I feel like in school when I tried to like stand out, like I wanted to be more in that like masculine state, feminine, but like now I've learned how important it is to have respect for my own like feminine side, and how important feminine side is in business. So like how did you figure out a way to kind of maintain a balance in that, and kind of I guess like stop being one of the bros and just like
I honestly, I just started being more me. That's like, I'm not a sports gal. Like, I don't follow football or any, so I can't even engage in that conversation. I don't play golf, so like the things that I'm interested in, I just don't care. It's just not, I just started being more me. And I think it's also, it's important for younger women that are earlier in their careers to also see that as being okay. So I realize it's not so easy as this, just be yourself when you're surrounded by all men and you feel like you got to adapt and fit in. And, I think, and then even at Carhartt, when I started 6 years ago, I would say that certain segments of our organization were a little bit boys clubby, not terrible. Again, not crazy, but like the sales organization. And we made a concerted effort in sales to mentor and bring up women, and sure enough, we've got a lot of great female leaders in that organization now that we didn't have 6 years ago. So I think it just takes a focus, and giving women the opportunity and showing others that it's not about being masculine, so hopefully that answers your question.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay. Good. These are amazing questions. They're hard questions, but good ones. Thank you. Prudence, do you have another question? Do we have time?
Mine is not really a question. I wanted to react to what she said. I believe that there is no laid down look for how women should look like. So you can say that somebody is looking masculine
or
feminine, and you identify as a woman. That's
right.
That's
You're 100% right. Yes, yeah. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Mhm.
And with that, thank you so much, Andy. And I'm sure afterwards, if anyone has any questions, please shoot them over. I'm sure we could go on for hours about your experiences and everything that you've gone through. So we appreciate you taking the time and energy out of your day to come and share some wisdom. And then the 4 agreements, I hope everyone put that on their book list and got to kick off International Women's Day. Right. So thank you so much, Andy. I see the little clap reactions. I love that everyone's using them. If we were in person, I'm sure it'd be standing ovation, which if I had a standing desk, I would do the same right now. But thank you, Andy. We're going to close out the keynote session. And right now, what we're going to do is if anyone needs to turn their camera off, refill your water bottle, use the restroom, now is the time to do it. We're going to take a short intermission before I start to kind of talk about our panel section. So with that, I'm going to talk about the reasoning behind everything and our topic. So the panel portion of our event is where we invited 5 amazing women from diverse backgrounds to talk about something that we've all experienced, which is imposter syndrome. And a lot of you may have a definition of imposter syndrome in your head. However, we're going to be able to go through that as a group and then hear from all of their diverse experiences. So the topic of the panel is silencing self-doubt and overcoming imposter syndrome. It's important to understand that as college students, I'm sure we've all felt it at some point, and as women, we definitely feel it sometimes more than men. And we're far from alone in this feeling, and all these women have had some spectacular experiences to share it with you and give you some insight on how to overcome that. So speaking on the topic today, we're going to have Heidi Kodam, Kristen Brown, Patricia Sapko, Kathy Mull, and Charmaine Brown. And moderating our panel, we'll have Barbara Stahl, the advisor of Women in Business Leadership. And we're going to do this for about 30 minutes and then have 10 to 15 minutes of this panel segment be able to utilize the chat function and the Q&A, just like we did with Andy. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it off to Barbara. I know she has a little bit of an introduction, and we'll get going there. So thank you, guys.
All right, thank you, Paige. Welcome, everyone. It's absolutely wonderful to see you today. I was listening through my earbuds, and I forgot. All right, so real quick, as Paige said, I'm the advisor to the Women in Business Leadership Group. What an honor for me. It's just been an amazing journey with these women. I teach in the College of Business. I teach strategy and strategy execution for undergrads, and I teach in the Graduate School for Organization Development as well. So that's a little bit about me. And I think, let me first ask our panelists to introduce themselves quickly, and then we'll come back. And I just want to set a bit of a tone of why are we having this conversation? Why is it important? And what is imposter syndrome? So we're all on the same page. But let's start with the introductions and get the voices here. So Charmaine, would you like to kick us off?
Yes, thank you so much, Barbara, and thank you so much for having me here today. My name is Charmaine Brown, and I am a corporate leader turned entrepreneur. Started a consulting practice in the diversity, equity, and inclusion space almost 5.5 years ago. But in my corporate life, almost 28 years of experience in human resources, diversity, equity, and inclusion, philanthropy, and organizational development. I have a lot of experience with imposter syndrome and have lots of amazing stories that either I have curated because of my own experiences or that of the colleagues and the network of amazing women that I have in my community. So I'm happy to be able to be with you all today and to share how I can support you on your journey as we deal with this crazy thing called imposter syndrome.
Thank you, Charmaine. Kristen, you want to go next?
Hi, everybody. My name is Kristen Brown. I'm a digital developer lead at Owens Corning in Toledo. And I graduated from BGSU with a degree in computer science in 2014. And I fell into computer science because I have always, over time, kind of developed an interest in technology and was always really interested in the internet. And then I fell in love with programming as a student of computer science because I just loved how it was creative, it was practical, and how you could just build something and then it was usable by someone else and it was maybe help them do their job easier or help them do something in their lives more easy. So that's how I fell into it. I have kind of developed recently more of a passion for spreading information about the field of computer science and software development in the hopes of getting a broader audience interested in it and growing the diversity overall in the industry. And definitely have experienced imposter syndrome many, many times. And so I'm excited to be here and to talk about that topic.
Thank you, Kristen. Welcome. Hey, Patty.
Hi, everybody. I'm Patty Sopko. I am a faculty member at the University of Toledo in the College of Nursing. I work with both UT and BG students. My pathway as a nurse, I've been a nurse for over 35 years, and I've had several different positions. So with nursing, you graduate with nursing, but you can choose your specialties. So mine specialties are labor and delivery, hospice care. So I worked at the beginning of life and then the end. Informatics in the 90s when we had no computers. And so that was super fun to see go from paper to computer. And it was where I got my love of teaching, I think, because I was in charge of teaching everybody, not only the program, but how to actually touch a computer without thinking it was going to blow up. So, and then my role now as faculty, I also am the student nursing advisor, and I love it. I love it because I just get to see these, nursing is mostly women. I do have men in the Student Nursing Association, but watching them all blossom into leadership. So getting that time to try out leadership roles in college is so important in building their confidence. So I'm very happy to be here.
Patty, welcome. Heidi, let's hear from you next.
Hi, good evening. My name is Heidi Kodum, and I am an engineer with Dana Incorporated. I've been with Dana a total of about 8 years in a few different capacities. I recently took a new title, Senior Manager of Global Advanced Technologies and also University Relations. I have a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering. I have a master's degree in education from BGSU, and I'm currently pursuing my master's degree in engineering from University of Toledo. So quite a quite a difference in degrees, but what I love about it is that I'm able to bridge both my love of engineering and also education with my role at Dana. A big focus of my previous responsibilities was to bring engineering education opportunities to our primarily mechanically engineering-based engineering organization. And as the entire automotive industry has moved towards electric vehicles, we have a lot of mechanical engineers that don't necessarily have the electrical engineering component of what we need them to have in order to produce these electrified driveline products. So I really enjoy bringing the expertise from both of my focus areas. I do have a kind of a roundabout path to get where I've been today. I worked for Dana for full time for about 4 years before I left to go back to school to get my education degree. And in that process, I got married and I became pregnant with my first daughter. And when she was born, I was a full-time student. So I didn't have a job to go back to, and I decided to stay home full-time with her, which is something I never ever thought in my life that I would do. So I was home full-time with both of my daughters for about 10 years. And about 3 years ago, I got back into the workforce and didn't miss a beat. So I'm really happy to be here with all of you, and hope to inspire you to find your own path to get to where you want to be.
Thank you, Heidi. And then Kathy, let's hear from you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me tonight. So I'm Kathy Mull. I am the Executive Director of The Cocoon. The Cocoon is Wood County's domestic and sexual violence agency. So we primarily work with individuals who are experiencing domestic violence, sexual violence, sex trafficking, stalking, sexual harassment. And then we also do some work with adult survivors of childhood sexual abuse. So my My background, I'm a licensed social worker by profession. Most of the work that I've done is in the victim advocacy field, so working with survivors and also doing crisis work. So working with individuals that are experiencing a whole wide range of crises, including things such as, managing suicidal ideations, harm to others, those types of things. And so I've spent most of my career working either with women, similar to, I think, what Patty said. A lot of social workers are women. We're not all women, but a lot of us are, and then empowering women. Unfortunately, the majority of survivors of gender-based violence are also women, and so we spend a lot of time really working with women and providing that empowerment. And so, one of the things, in addition to watching the survivors that we work with find their voice and grow, is also being able to mentor the staff, which again is also primarily women that work for our agency, and really trying to find their voice and find their way, and hopefully become, the next set of leaders, not necessarily in our movement, but kind of across different disciplines.
Thank you, Kathy. And again, welcome to everyone. As you guys can see, we have an amazing range and diversity of experiences and fields. So I think the message here is, imposter syndrome isn't limited to any one place or any one person or any one thing. So we want to hear about those experiences. So let's first say, well, what is imposter syndrome? And I think we probably all know, but basically it's like, the feeling that you're a fraud, right? That everyone is going to find that out to boot, and that, maybe you really don't deserve your accomplishments, or you feel like you don't belong. So it can be a belief about accomplishments and competencies, but also fit, right? So there are a couple of different ways. So common traits may include, not that anyone would recognize those, but holding yourself to impossible standards, trying to control your environment. I think Andy talked about that a little bit, and comparing yourself to others. So it's really worrying that we're not going to be doing our jobs, that we're not getting good enough grades, or maybe that we don't have as much knowledge or experience as someone else. Hopefully that helps sum it up. But we believe that even when the evidence points to a different outcome, right? And we just irrationally ignore the evidence and continue thinking we're going to fall behind everyone else. That's sort of the definition of imposter syndrome. And we'll see if that resonates with our panelists. So why are we having this conversation? Why is this an important topic? Well, incident ranges, but basically estimated 70% of people feel like a fraud at one time or another. And it's common. I'm delighted to see a few men in our audience as well, because it's common not just for women, but for men as well, and across a wide range of age groups, from adolescents to late stage career professionals. And what I thought was kind of interesting, one study found that first generation college students, particularly in the STEM fields, are likely to suffer from it. So hopefully, and we needlessly suffer. We don't need to suffer. And let's find out what some of these experiences have been from our panelists, and how they've overcome that. So panelists, the first question I'd like you to talk about is, can you name or share a time when the imposter syndrome and self-doubt may have affected your motivation or the choices you made? And this is going to be a free-for-all, so whoever wants to go first.
All right, so luck of the draw here. I am first generation college, although I did not major in STEM. So I think probably some of that imposter syndrome feeling definitely was kind of embedded in me from the time I was in college. But I had a pretty vibrant career when I worked in corporate America. In the last 12 years prior to starting my business, I worked for a national real estate company and took that organization from, infancy all the way to national noteworthy around diversity and inclusion. And I'll never forget, I was doing I attended a women's leadership VIP session They just wanted us to kind of sit and talk to each other, but they wanted to role play. So I was the lucky one to get selected to go on stage. And what happened during that experience was that I didn't know that terminology, imposter syndrome. I just knew that all the accolades, all the things that I accomplished, all the work that I had done, I languaged and labeled it because they let me. And what turned into, here's the example that I want you all to use. I literally lost it, right? In front of all these women. And they were women that I had looked up to, that I, aspired to be just from a leadership standpoint. And everything that I said about myself, like, they put me in the position of opportunity. Yes, I earned it, but, right, all the words that kind of negates your own successes. Every last one of those women sitting there watching me fall apart came up to me afterwards and said, I feel the same way. So one, I was able to name it. Two, I was able to acknowledge that, you know what? No, you did earn this. You do have a right to be there. You were the one who moved this organization forward. Yes, with support, but this was you, right? And I'm not the only one. That was very enlightening for me.
Thank you, Shereen.
Yeah, I have a similar experience, Charmaine. So I, being out of the workforce for 10 years, closer to 11, there was definitely a lot of self-doubt when I came back to corporate America. Things from, just my engineering skills were very rusty. Things simple like, Microsoft Excel had changed versions 3 and 4 times over since I had last really used it on a daily basis. And so it took me a lot of encouragement. Fortunately, I have a very great support system at home, and the constant reminder, you'll get it, just don't give up. But shortly after I started back full time, I had the privilege to enroll in a Dale Carnegie class that Dana was sponsoring. And if you ever get the opportunity, I highly recommend. It's some of the best hours in class that I have spent in my entire life. And one of the biggest takeaways from that is that Dale Carnegie says that when you are asked to do a task, you are asked because you have earned the right to do it. People don't ask you to do something because they don't think that you can't. They ask you to do things because they know that you can do something. So, take that as a win that other people are seeing positive and are seeing your value. And it's often harder for you to see your own value. It's much easier for others. So take that as a lead that you are an expert in what you're doing, and don't be afraid to flaunt it.
Anyone else?
I do want to say, because I had just told you all how many times I changed the course of my career, even though it was under the broad term nursing. It was certainly not the same nursing, but I think that having those self-doubts is normal, and it happens when you're being exposed to something that is so unfamiliar to you. But part of having this syndrome is the perfectionism that makes you think you need to be perfect right off the bat. So understanding that you have to allow yourself this learning curve, and finding mentors around you who seem willing to work with you, eventually you're going to get to a point where it becomes less of your self-talk because you start feeling good about what you're doing. But then you change career paths or a new job, and it's going to come back. But just telling yourself that that's a normal thing, and just finding those mentors really helps, I think. And then be a mentor. Don't just take it, give it back to somebody who notice wants some kind of path like you have.
Patty, just before we hear from others, I just want to follow up on what you said, and because the research shows that as well. You talked about when you change jobs, when you change careers, when you come back, when you're making that, this is perfectly normal, right? Of course, there's that learning curve, but that's not the same as imposter syndrome, right?
Right.
So, it's kind of like, being good, understanding the difference. I don't know. We want to hear from a couple of others, and feel free to weigh in your thoughts on that as well.
Yeah, I think one of the things for me that was a struggle for me for a long time in my career, and I started out as my first job out of college after I graduated was a part-time victim advocate, and then I've slowly over time have worked my way, and now I'm the director of a nonprofit agency, that's serving of almost 750 survivors in a year, right? And I think one of the things that was really a struggle for me and a learning curve is recognizing that my voice mattered. And that, my opinions counted, my voice mattered, that my ideas were good, and that I had the right to have a seat at the table and to have those conversations. But I think, that self-doubt is so easy to creep in, and that, do I really have good ideas? Does it really matter? And then I think also, and then being willing to recognize that just because somebody at the table doesn't necessarily hear your voice or agree with your voice doesn't necessarily mean that you're wrong. Or that you shouldn't have that voice at the table. But I think sometimes for a lot of us, that's a really hard thing to push through. And I agree with some of the things that have been said, is that every time we try something new, whatever it is that's new, those pieces are going to creep in. But I think it's really continuing to have that self-talk to say that my voice matters, my ideas are good, that I know what I'm talking about, and that it's okay for me to have that voice.
Yeah. Thank you, Kathy. And Kristen, I'm going to move to the next question, but we're going to see what you think about that first. And I think, the question is, so as a woman, we've already said this is not uncommon. Men feel imposter syndrome as well. But how do you think it may have affected you more than your counterparts, your male counterparts, right? And do we deal with it differently?
That's a really, really good question. I definitely have had, being in computer science, which is definitely a lot more men in that field than women. I think one of the ways we struggle with it is seeing other people around us that look like us. And so when you are kind of surrounded by everybody who kind of fit maybe a different mold, even though there are differences amongst those people as well, you can start to feel like you don't belong because of that. And so I think that's one of the things that maybe women experience differently, especially through my experiences. Walking into a computer science class and it definitely was a lot to get used to be the one or one of two or three maybe women in the class, sometimes being the only woman in the class. There were times when I considered maybe switching majors because I thought I don't fit in this mold. I'm really glad I didn't. And, I felt sometimes that potentially they had talked about, programming since they were 14 or 15. That kind of gets to the point that you asked about how we maybe experience it differently. I think men and women both experience imposter syndrome. I think we maybe manifest it differently. So I know myself, I tend to retreat and kind of self-doubt internally and don't tell anybody about it. Whereas I think potentially, of course, I don't know their experience, but the men in my industry or, maybe who I was studying with in school at the time seemed to, when they felt that, maybe project that they knew a lot about a particular topic. So they might say, oh, I've worked with that technology, or I really know that technology, maybe even if they didn't personally feel that themselves. So actually that could kind of feed into my self-doubt as well, because I'm thinking, oh, they know this and I don't know that, but maybe they just have a little bit of experience with it. So that's something that I've experienced.
Yeah. Thank you. And even, I know STEM, computer science, like my perception is, but even the College of Business, I look around my classrooms like, where are the women? I actually had a student a few semesters ago transfer out of a section because there were way more men than women. And it just unfortunately totally intimidated her. So she was not ready to step into it. But you all are nodding your head. So let me hear more from you about this question.
So I was thinking about what Kristen was saying about, men having or showing or expressing that they have experience that maybe they don't. And it reminds me of the study and the research around women who have a tendency to not apply for opportunities if they can't check the box on all of the requirements, versus a male. He may see one or two things and say, hey, I got this, right? I think it's kind of the same thing. Once you get inside of the organization, there's a willingness to kind of, go out on a limb more and take more risk, or at least the perception is that from a male perspective. I think one of the other interesting things too is that we spend so much time focusing, and I think I shared this when we were all debriefing or planning this conversation, is I have a friend who talks about the hag in the attic. Her name is Kim Boudreaux Smith. And it's, and put another way, it's the stinking thinking, it's the stuff that we say to ourselves all the time. And it's really important to really start managing your thought process around that, right? Recognizing when the stinking thinking or the hag starts to enter into your brain and starts telling you that you can't do something. It becomes really important to understand that you have to identify the trigger and to be able to push past it. And for me, I do a lot of affirmations. You probably can see it, the "you got this." That's something that I always tell myself, especially when that hag is talking. And it happens every single day for me as an entrepreneur now. Even 5.5 years now in the game, it still happens. And so I really talk to myself and tell myself, you got this. And when I really need to really talk to myself, I pull out some Glennon Doyle, Untamed. You're a goddamn cheetah. And sometimes that kind of gets me pumped and back in the game, because sometimes we're just not, our mindset causes us to retreat, as Kristen said. And it's important that you figure out what's those triggers, what's that quote, what's that saying, who's the person you can go to get you back in the game, because it can take you out.
I love that. And I'm just noticing in the chat, Tamsin is saying she has affirmations tattooed on her body. I think maybe we'll ask her about that when she comes up, right? So yeah, so that's great. What are some other, either, how do you think this has affected you? Or, Charmaine, you've kind of led us to, how do you deal with it? Right. So that's probably as important for our folks here who have joined us today. So either feel free to answer, go ahead and build on that question about the male counterpoints if you have a story there, or let's talk about ways that we manage this and how you've managed it in your careers.
I think something that is a struggle, and particularly for women, when we think about the differences between, how men manifest things and how women do, is that typically, women are socialized in a certain way at a very young age. And so when we talk about having to combat all of these sort of internal messages or these internal fears or these internal self-doubts, sometimes it's having to have combated that from a very young age that we've now carried into adulthood. And so, I think that typically, generally, even if it's not intentional or conscious, a lot of times as women, we're socialized to be people pleasers, like don't rock the boat and don't step on people's toes. And so when you find yourself in those positions where you feel like you have to have a stronger voice or be a stronger leader or make yourself heard, I think you're combating, a lot of times we're combating sort of those internal thought processes about, how do I match those two things together because they seem so very different. I think too, a lot of times, strength in women is valued differently than strength in men is. And so, when we think about how men and women deal with things. And so I agree, I think men feel imposter syndrome as well, but I think they've got a different set of voices in their head that they, are hearing, or ways that they're dealing with it than we are. And I think a lot of times as women, we tend to, I think what Kristen said, I think we tend to go back to sort of the roots of where we maybe are unintentionally socialized in a certain way. And men do the same thing. Theirs just look different. There's a little bit more power and accolades for being strong men a lot of times than there is for being strong women.
Very interesting. I'd love to hear from a couple of others of you.
As far as actions to take, make sure you're confronting your thoughts, and are they based in reality, or is that just a perception? Like when you're telling yourself you're not good enough or you shouldn't voice an idea, examining why you're feeling that and why it is that you don't feel you should have a voice. Because a lot of times it's what someone else said, is we tend to think if we're not perfect, if we don't have the right thing to say, we probably shouldn't say it. So we keep these great thoughts to ourselves that should be coming out more, but really confront your negative self-talk. The other thing is take action. I think having, motivational things, it's all over my house, my office, but also what's your action plan? So what is making you feel that you're not worthy of where you are? And is there a way where you would feel better? Talking to a colleague, talking to someone above you, participating in something, getting on a committee, anything that might improve you and fight this self-doubt. Also, don't be afraid to try things. Don't be afraid. I always thought doing a research poster was this huge thing. And I was not ready for that. I didn't have a PhD, whatever. I've done several. When I figured out what it really was compared to what I thought, it's could be a totally different world. And so please try things, engage in whatever it's going to take to make you feel comfortable where you're at.
Yeah, Patty, I'm hearing you say we need to challenge our assumptions, which is a little bit what Andy talked about, right? I thought, she kind of set it up pretty nicely for us, just to go ahead and challenge ourselves and our assumptions for that.
Yeah, I would like to amplify what Patty was saying. Like, just because something is hard doesn't mean you can't do it or that you weren't meant to do it. Don't be afraid of the challenge. Not everyone has everything figured out from the beginning all of the time, and neither do the people around you. So, fake it till you make it, basically, is kind of the attitude sometimes that I have. But just because it's hard doesn't mean that you're not cut out for it.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Kathy. Or Kristen, which one of you is going to jump in here?
That's all right. I just had one quick thing to add, which is that something that's helped me personally is remembering my why of why I'm doing something. So if I hit a roadblock or I start to doubt my ability to do it, I go back to why was it that I was doing this in the first place, and kind of resetting myself. That's something that really helps me get the passion that I need in order to stop thinking about, can I do it, and start thinking about, how do I do it? And then something else that's helped me too is not comparing myself to people who have a lot more experience than I do. I think especially very early in my career, I'd look at my coworkers had 10 years of experience and I'd compare myself to them, and there was no reason to do that. Comparison's bad in general, but especially that, because there's no way I would have that level of experience. So those are a few things that I've done that have helped me get through some of those harder moments.
Yeah. Thank you. I know we just have a few more minutes, and then we want to make sure we open it up for the questions, and don't hesitate to put questions in the chat box, or wait and go ahead and raise your hand. And we talked about this, and you've been alluding to this, several of you, through our conversation, but we talked about the role of a mentor, right? Could you talk about that in terms of imposter syndrome and how that could be a good resource?
Absolutely. For me, I have a couple of mentors, and they definitely help to quiet the hag in the attic. they have your back. I mean, that is what the role of the mentor is. And they don't always necessarily say things that you want to hear. Sometimes their advice can be difficult to hear, but they really have your best outlook, at heart. And finding someone who you look up to in your career, whether that be a professor or a boss, or someone in senior leadership who maybe is in a different department who you admire as their leadership style, get to know the person. And you can't just randomly choose a mentor. I don't think there has to be a match, and it has to be a good pairing. But it's definitely worth the effort to find a mentor.
Just add to what Heidi said, that you don't need to just have one mentor. I have several. They all give me very different and unique things, right? But what they all consistently do is provide me with constructive feedback, and they push me to think beyond where I'm at that moment. And yes, I'm seeing in the comments, your board of directors, for me, it's just, those are my people, right? My people, they get me, they understand me, and they are not shy to tell me what I need to hear versus what I want to hear.
And I think that support circle is so important, just like all the way around. I think mentorship is really important for all of the reasons that everybody else has shared, but also just that support system. So the folks that you have that are in your circle that you can go to, who can push you when you don't feel like you're going to keep going, or can push you when you feel like it's too hard, or that you can't do it. We've talked a lot about those feelings of can't. I think it's also having somebody who can combat sort of that irrational thinking. And so when you get in that place and you start to have self-doubt, that you have, whether it's a mentor or whether it's somebody that maybe you consider more to be that support person for you, who can say to you, where is that thought coming from? I don't know that thought really makes sense, or I'm not sure that, that's a place that you want to sit, and how can we work through that? And so I think that, that one of the best things you can do is have those people around you who can support and who can push and who can offer ideas and suggestions, and provide that extra mentorship or guidance.
Thank you, everyone. I think to keep on time, Paige, if I'm not mistaken, we want to go to the questions. I hope you're all noticing some really great comments in the chat. And if we had more time, of course, I'd love to explore this, where don't be afraid to fail. And there's a conversation to be had about, are women afraid to fail, or sometimes are we afraid of success, right? So that's a whole different conversation. Let's have some questions for our panelists.
I see our first hand up there, so go ahead and ask.
Hi, my question is for Ms. Charmaine Brown. When it comes to imposter syndrome or diversity and inclusion, how do you advocate for finding your own voice within that, I guess, sphere? How do you find a balance between advocating for it, but also remaining humble?
Oh, that's a really great question. And I was thinking, as Kristen was talking about the gender dynamics, there's also the challenge of intersectionality, in that, we're all kind of commonly bonded by our gender, but we also have some very different experiences based on our ethnic and cultural backgrounds. And so it's the same formula, right? It's all the recommendations and sharing our experiences. I would say that is absolutely the case. You still need to find your voice. You still need to, build your confidence. You need to create your support system. But your support system may look different, right? For me, and I can only speak to my experience, I can certainly talk about clients I work with, but my experience was one where I made sure that I built a relationship with, because there were very few people who actually looked like me, but I made sure that I built strategic relationships with decision makers, with people who had influence. And I got to know them personally. I don't know, you know, when Andy was talking about the strength finders, one of another thing that I didn't realize there was a title for is, you know, my orientation is woo, like winning others over. And I didn't realize how much of a value that was to me until I got a little bit more into my career and understand that I just had something unique that I could build relationships with people, and I was able to kind of leverage that to build the relationships where I was put in positions of opportunity. So I think it's important for you to kind of lean into some of those relationships, even if it's uncomfortable, even if they don't necessarily look like you, but identifying those people that you can build that relationship with and then kind of create that space for yourself is going to be important, because there are those additional challenges that you face based on different intersectionality components of who you are and where you're at in your journey.
Thank you, Charmy. And then I see Prudence has her hand up. If you want to go ahead with your question.
Yeah. About the imposter syndrome issue. I want to know whether, as women, if we feel that we need to prove a point, or we need to prove that we are good at it, at doing what we are doing, is that also imposter syndrome?
Who wants to take that?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's looking at the imposter syndrome, I guess, from the other side. But absolutely, I agree with that sentiment. And you just have to believe in yourself and keep going and not worry about what others are thinking of you. You're doing this for you. You're doing this for the women that come behind you. And you know, you just have to keep chugging away at it. Some days are going to be easier than others, but you know, keep your forward momentum. That's the most important thing you can do.
Yeah, and to add to that, I think that proving yourself isn't necessarily a bad thing. Like it can be very empowering to go for something and accomplish it, and just kind of give it your all. So I think you know, proving yourself can be you can view that very positively, as I wanted to achieve something and I did.
There's so many layers to to this, that it's, you know, if women were in dominant roles, right, in positions of power, then it wouldn't necessarily be a question of, do women need to prove themselves? It would just be, individuals are always in situations where they have to prove themselves, right? We have to prove that we're successful. We have to prove that we know what we know. But it's such a complex and layered question, and it always depends on where you are within your organization. Kathy, I suspect that you have a lot of women, gender diversity in your particular organization. I work with another domestic violence organization, and primarily the leadership team is all women, right? So the dominant role in their organization is gender. So it's not necessarily women trying to prove themselves in the space that they're in. So but I think it's all the same things that we've been talking about. It's just that we have a lens on gender because we're not in those positions of power in dominant roles when you think about organizations. So
thank you, everyone. I think we're closing in on time. I found one quote I wanted to share in closing, if it's okay, and that I loved it. It is, "You are not an imposter, you're an original." So with that, I'll turn it over to Paige. And thank you to our panelists. Very much appreciate your time and your insights.
Yes, thank you guys all so much. And I really hope that everyone in this session right now heard some things that they can take back and really reflect on and learn from. And it was really an eye-opening conversation, even for me. And I've talked to these women a few times now, and I still keep learning more. So it's just such an amazing experience to hear from a variety of successes, hearing something that I as a college student have dealt with on a regular basis, and I'm sure a lot of us have as well. And going forward, I'm sure if some of our panelists wouldn't mind sharing their emails in the future, if anyone has any questions, they're a great group of women for support. And I know for a fact that they have a lot more experiences they could share. And then with that, we've now learned about how to break your own personal glass ceiling. And then we've spoken about some obstacles you may have been able to overcome. So now it's time to put it in motion and how to unleash your vision. So now we have Dr. Tamsin Astor, and she's going to be our interactive speaker for tonight. She's the founder and chief habit scientist of Yoga Brain Coaching, and she's known for giving her clients the tools to shift her mindset, organize their vision, and improve their habits to create an efficient and productive business. We make over 35,000 decisions every day, which leads to the decision fatigue. Dr. Astor helps her clients reduce the amount of overwhelming decision-making they do by harnessing their goal achieving machine, AKA your brains. Prior to coaching, Dr. Astor was an academic and then a consultant, using yoga and meditation to support her children and therapists and teachers and students on the ADHD and autism spectrum and in struggling inner city schools. She holds a PhD in neuroscience and psychology and a postdoctorate in education. She's an executive coach and the author of the book, Force of Habit, Unleash Your Power by Developing Great Habits, which I'll put in the link in the chat for all of you to check out after a session. And with no further ado, Tamsin, unleash your vision.
Thank you so much. Wow, what a fun evening we've had so far. And I will be building a lot on what everyone else has been talking about. So hello, and welcome. My first question to you is, why are you here? I would love you to put your comment in the chat. Why are you here? Are you here to celebrate the women in your life? Are you here to be inspired by other women? Are you here to learn? Are you here because you just thought, oh, this is a good thing? Are you here because you love Paige? Like, why are you here? What is turning you on about International Women's Day? And the reason I ask that is that I follow a lot of people on social media, and it's been interesting today watch people go, what is the point of this day? It's completely insignificant. To others going, it's really important that we acknowledge this day, particularly because women are still in a position of minority. And actually, when I got my postdoctoral fellowship and I went to sign the documents, the woman said, oh, great, you've filled our minority quotient. And I was 25. And I looked at her and I went, excuse me? You're a minority. I was like, I'm white, I'm middle class, and I have a PhD. I don't understand. What do you mean I'm a minority? And she's like, you're a woman in STEM. And I was like, I've never thought of myself as a minority. I'd literally never in my life thought of myself as a minority before. It blew my mind open. And moving to the Midwest, having grown up in central London, made me an activist in a number of different areas, but that's a different conversation. So why are you here? Yes, I'm seeing some great, to be inspired, to learn about women leaders. I'm here to learn how to empower myself and the women around me. Yes, to learn, to be inspired. Oh, this is fabulous. All right, well, hopefully I will inspire you more this evening. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about my journey to becoming the chief habit scientist, and then the three main strands that I want you to start leaning into and really working on so that you can fully unleash your vision of what you want in the world and the world you're trying to create. So I grew up in central London, beautiful life, happy family, got married at 24, moved to the US for a postdoctoral fellowship at Washington University in St. Louis. Had two little boys while I was doing my postdoc, which was interesting because, the US is one of only 2 countries in the world that has no paid maternity leave. One of only 2 countries. The other country is Suriname, just in case you were interested. So I got 10 weeks unpaid maternity leave in comparison to my friends in London who were getting 6 months fully paid maternity leave. I had my boys. In 2007, my husband, AKA the ex-husband,
and I moved to Cleveland. He got a position at Case Western Reserve University. And within about a year of us moving here, my younger son, who was then 2, ended up in the ER. Not once, not twice, but 3 times. By the 3rd time, we were starting to get a little bit concerned. And so we started testing him and testing him. And after 7 hours in the ER, it's about 11 o'clock at night. It was a Thursday after Labor Day. This nurse came into the room and she said, "I'm terribly sorry. You need to come outside. The pediatric oncologist is here to have a conversation with you." And so I walked into the hallway and I looked into the eyes of this beautiful, sweet, gentle old man who said to me, "I'm really sorry, but your son has cancer." So my life completely changed at that point to being a young, sort of excited mother in my early 30s with 2 little boys who were absolutely my world. I was also at this point a yoga teacher, and my life completely changed, and I had to lean into the place of serving others. And the difficulty with that is that I served everyone's needs to the detriment of myself. Can anybody else resonate with that as a woman and as a mother? Right? Like you serve and you serve and you serve until you get depleted. And I got to the point where I was massively depleted. I got chronic insomnia, allergies, hives, food allergies, bloating, weight loss, weight gain. And every doctor I went to tested and tested and tested, and nobody could come up with anything that was wrong with me. And so they would write prescriptions saying, "Oh, you can take this sleeping pill, you can take this antacid, you can do these things." And I kept saying to them, but what's the root cause? What's underneath all of this? Why am I getting so sick? And nobody could come up with a solution. So me being me, I decided I had to find something else. And I discovered at that point Ayurveda, which is the sister science of yoga. And it literally means the science of life. That's what the 2 words mean. Ayurveda, the science of life. And so I started practicing the rituals in Ayurveda. And one of the core principles in Ayurveda is what this practice called dinacharya, which is your daily rituals, your daily routines. Are you going to bed and getting up at the same time every day? Are you eating at the same time every day? Are you taking care of your mind? Are you taking care of your body? And I've realized I'd spent the last 5 years putting everybody else's needs before my own when I got pregnant. I was serving my sons. I was serving my ex-husband. I was reacting to the needs of my clients. I was reacting to the needs of my parents. I was in a state of chronic overservice, right? So I was in a very reactive state and I wasn't living in an intentional way. And so I started creating rhythms. I started creating routines. I started prioritizing my well-being. I started waking up an hour before my kids, which, given that my kids would wake up at like 5:45, was a tough sell. But starting my day on my terms completely changed my world. And so that was when I realized the power of habits. If you don't have control of your daily habits, you are wasting time, you are being inefficient, you are not keeping on track for your life your way. So that was when I was like, "Oh, habit, this stuff is brilliant." And so me being me, I decided to get certified in Ayurveda, got certified in Ayurveda. Then I was like, well, I need to share this with people. So then I got certified as an Ayurvedic health coach. So I started adding Ayurvedic health coaching to my yoga teaching practice, and life motored on. I was like, oh, this is great. I've got everything under control, right? Of course, when you feel that way, the proverbial's about to hit the fan, right? You know it, right? So then it's like, okay, this is all great. So then we had a 3rd kid because we were like, why not add to the craziness? So now I have a 17-year-old, a 14-year-old, and a 10-year-old. My 14-year-old is my cancer survivor, so he's made it. So we're motoring along, everything feels good. And then my cousin, who was like my brother, we grew up together, was diagnosed with leukemia when he and I turned 37. And it was a real shocker because I'd just gone through this experience of lymphoma with my son. I thought, really, another close family member going through cancer? And as he was going through the treatment, he had bone marrow transplant, and he had a 7-month brutal battle and ended up dying in January of 14. He and I had lots of really heartfelt conversations about the power of the mind over the body. And how if you don't manage your mental habits, your mindset, like all of the stuff that everyone's been talking about, the imposter syndrome, you can literally make yourself sick. If you don't watch how you talk to yourself, you can literally make yourself sick. And we know the power of the mind body. When we look at just our ability to change, our heart rate, our blood pressure by breathing differently, thinking different thoughts, right? So he and I had lots of conversations about how he had struggled in the last 10 years with a lot of anger in his job and in one of his key relationships, and how he felt that he'd turned that anger inwards, and that turning the anger inwards had caused huge long-term health issues, which ultimately led to his death. And so that was my moment when I realized I really needed to take charge of my mental habits. And that if I didn't prioritize mindset in how I coach, and when I talk about mindset, I'm talking about the way you talk to yourself, right? So the negative self-talk, the I'm too fat to wear those pants conversation that every woman I'm sure in this room has had, right? And also the boundaries we have and how we let what other people say to us affect us, right? And then the kind of more broader stage around mindset of how we navigate things that are completely outside of our control, like the pandemic, right? So of course, I did a mindset certification because, when I get excited and interested in something, I study it. And that was also part of when I started having some of these affirmations, which Charmaine was talking about, tattooed on my body. And I have lots of tattoos. I've got 14 or 15 of them so far. And they all remind me on a daily basis to lean into the things that are really important for me. My current and most favorite one is I have the words outrageous joy tattooed on my thigh facing me. So every morning when I sit down to pee, the first thing I see is outrageous joy. And I think, how am I going to live into outrageous joy for myself today? How am I going to create outrageous joy for my children? How am I going to create outrageous joy for everyone I come into contact with? Because that, I think, is our birthright. We're here for joy and pleasure, and we can combine that with our big juicy mission. And my personal big juicy mission is to give women everywhere access to education and information about their bodies, about finances, about health, about all the things that will empower them to take their position in the world and live the life that they want their way. So my cousin Mark died, and I, at this point, thought, okay, life is pretty sucky. But I had my 3 babies and I had a business that was starting to grow. And I decided to get certified as an executive coach because, like, why not add more to the plate? That's generally, I'm an activator like Andy. I'm like, go in there, stir it up, think things through, and let's get certified and do this thing. So I went and started getting an executive coaching certification at Weatherhead and launched a second branch to my business. So I had a health coaching branch and an executive coaching branch. And then about 6 months later, my husband walked out for the 4th time. And I took a step back and realized that I'd stayed in my marriage for the sake of my children. I'd stayed in my marriage for the sake of this bigger vision I had of raising my children in a happy home, of following the line of long, happy marriages that came in my family. My parents were about to hit their 50th wedding anniversary. So for me, it was a real sort of punch to the gut to realize that this core relationship, this 16-year relationship that I'd really defined myself by for so long, was no longer working. And so I stepped back. I said to him, no, we're done. That 4th time he walked out, and I recreated the vision for my life. And this is what leads to another one of my tattoos. On my foot, I have the word moksha, which means liberation or freedom, tattooed on my foot, which reminds me every day, am I walking my path of freedom? And what does freedom mean for me? Because I had to recreate the idea of what it meant to be free, what it meant to live the life I wanted, what it meant to support my children and to create a completely different life. And so those are the 3 keys to unleashing your vision. So write those down. Number 1, you need to have your daily habits in control, because if you don't concentrate on how you're spending your time, and that's eating, sleeping, exercising, but also how long you're managing your email inbox for, right? How are you managing your meetings? How are you managing your organization? Right? There's so many different layers that our habits come in. 2, your mindset. Your mental mindset is really your mental habits, right? How are you talking to yourself? How much time are you wasting thinking about things that are no longer serving you? I'm a Buddhist, and one of my Buddhist teachers said to me early on when I was struggling with something, she said, you know, if you imagine your mind as Manhattan real estate, and when you're letting negative thoughts of other people or repetitious reliving of trauma or things that are no longer serving you live in your brain, live in your mind, think about how much of that real estate you're taking up that could be being used for spectacular, amazing, life-changing things. And that for me was a real moment of like, oh, being slapped around the face. Like, why would I waste this amazing real estate between my ears with irritation at my ex-husband or annoyance at this politician or whatever it was? Get into action, right? Stop and get into action. So the 3 keys to unleashing: vision, so that's your direction, your goals, your mission, your habits, your good daily practice, your mindset, your strong mental habits. So we're going to dive into those a little bit more now. So let's talk about habits. So what is a habit? A habit is a settled or regular tendency or practice, especially one that is hard to give up. So why do we care about habits? Habits are 95% of our self-care activity and over half of what we do every day at work and in our business and at home. So habits are really, really key. So I'm going to explain the 3 parts of a habit to you, and then we're going to get into groups and do a little digging into our habits. So grab a pen and write down. Habits have 3 parts: the cue, the action, and the reward. And I'm going to share these slides so that you can see. Share screen. There we go. Share. And then I'm going to go to present. So hopefully you guys can see the picture now, which has cue, action, reward, right? And there's a habit I had to learn: how to stand on my head. So cue, action, reward. Habits have 3 parts. Most of us, when we think about habits, we only think about the action, the actual behavior. Now, why is this important? It's important because of what's going on in the brain and how we can harness this goal-achieving machine between our ears to help support us in creating good habits. So we look at this lovely picture of the brain. The brain developed up and forward. So if you look, you'll see the brain stem, then you'll see that kind of pear-shaped thing at the back. That's the cerebellum, which has got about 50% of the brain's neurons. And then the brain developed up and forward, right? With the frontal cortex being the most evolved part of the brain. So when you look at where these parts of the habits are happening, this is where it gets really interesting. And to use my current favorite word, just juicy, right? So the cue and the reward, that's happening here. The action is actually happening in a less evolved part of the brain, the basal ganglia. So what does that mean? That means that it's much harder for you to change the behavior, because our brain is like, oh, you've done this, you've driven this path 10 times. Let me automate it for you so you don't have to think about, like, when I get to Target, I turn left, right? Or, oh, you've made coffee, 20 times with this coffee pot. I'm going to stop you, I'm going to stop you from having to think about all the different stages and just go into autopilot, right? So the brain is all about creating automation and being efficient. But inherent in the definition of a habit is that it's hard to change. And we know that also from the addiction literature, right? So what I want you to lean into is the fact that the cue and the reward is where the juice is at. So let's give an example. Maybe you've put on 10 pounds and you think, okay, what have I done in the last 3 months that's changed? And you think, oh God, I've discovered at 3 o'clock every afternoon, I get up and I walk to Starbucks and I get one of those like caramel strip waffle yummy things and a latte, right? And then you're like, crap, that's really like 700 calories or something ridiculous because it's Starbucks. So then you think, okay, so why am I doing this? This is when you become your own habit scientist. Am I doing this because I'm hungry, right? 3 hours since I ate lunch. Thinking requires sugar, requires effort, requires brain energy, right? And I'm hungry. So what happens if I eat an apple and a bag of almonds? Will that work for me? So maybe it's a yes, maybe it's a no, right? But you're trying it out. Second might be, I need to move my body. I've been sitting still for 3 hours. I'm just starting to feel lethargic. The blood's not moving. So I'm going to try getting up at 3 o'clock and going for a walk around the block. How does that work? And if that doesn't work, maybe a third option might be I'm craving social contact. And the reason I go to Starbucks is just that I want to be like, hey, how are you? Yeah, how are the Browns? Yeah, oh my God, the sun's shining. Isn't that amazing? Because it doesn't shine that much in Cleveland, 166 days a year, FYI, if you live here. So maybe you're craving social interaction, right? So what you're doing there is you're looking at what is cueing this cycle and what am I getting out of it? So I'm going to stop sharing right now. And what I'm going to ask you guys to do now is to think a little bit about habits. So I'm going to get you guys to go into breakout rooms. And I want you to think a little bit about a habit that you have that you want to change. A habit that you have that you want to change. And I want you to see, can you identify the cue, the thing that triggers the cycle? And can you identify the reward, what you're getting out of the habit? And you're going to get into the breakout groups and have a little bit of a conversation about habits that you have that are no longer serving you. Okay. And then we're going to come back in and talk a little bit more in the broader group. So let's go into breakout groups for 4 people for 5 minutes or so. Give you about a minute to organize yourself. And then you're going to do a little bit of work on this. All right. Sound good? Awesome. Habits. So we started with habits, which is the first key to really unleashing your vision. The second one that I really want to go into is mindset. And mindset is really, really key. So I'm going to give you a definition of mindset. Mindset is a collection of thoughts and beliefs that create your attitude, habits, or disposition and modulates how you respond to and interpret events. I'm going to read that again. It's a collection of thoughts and beliefs that create your attitude, habits, or disposition and modulates how you respond to and interpret events. So speaking of tattoos, I have a couple of tattoos relating to mindset. One is I have gratitude in Sanskrit tattooed on my wrist to remind me to always look for that silver lining. And I also have a Zen saying that says fall 7, rise 8, which is basically always get back up, right? So mindset, which we've touched on a little bit before this evening, particularly with the imposter syndrome and the fabulous conversation we had with the panelists there. So where does your mindset come from? Your mindset comes from your family, comes from your social or cultural beliefs, and it comes from what you've experienced or witnessed, right? So that you probably heard the 2 kind of main branches of mindset or the sort of understanding of mindset, or the 2 camps that we tend to fall in is the glass half full or the glass half empty, right? The growth or the fixed, right? So growth mindset is this idea that your skills and abilities can improve with practice, right? So it's that ownership that you can improve your life, right? And it's very much tied to learned optimism, which is this idea that if I work harder and smarter, I can resolve this, right? And this is an idea that if you look at the yogic and Buddhist texts, has been around for, thousands of years. And in the 1960s, Marty Seligman started studying this and like actually quantifying this and showed that, yes, there is a natural proclivity to be a glass half full or a glass half empty. However, you can train yourself to be an optimist. It is possible to be an optimist. And as we know from the neuroplasticity research, this idea that your brain is fixed is not true, that we can rewire our brain. And I'm going to go into that a little bit in a minute. So with the growth, I like to represent it as Tigger, right? It's the like, that kind of energy of like, we can do this, we can change it, right? Versus the fixed. So fixed mindset is this idea that, the skills you have or the abilities you have, you're born with them. And it ties in with the idea of learned helplessness, right? Nothing I do affects what happens to me, right? It's the pessimist, or what I think of as the Eeyore, that kind of, right? And you can really feel the energy of different people with those two kinds of energies. So I'm going to share my screen again so you can see. Here we go, share, and then I'm going to go to present. Okay, so and that's me 40 weeks pregnant with my third baby. When I was pregnant with my first baby, I couldn't do a headstand at all. By the time I got to my third baby, I could do a headstand even when I was due. And she came a few days later. All right, so here's an example of like the reframing the fixed to the growth, right? So fixed mindset, I don't have the management skills. Growth mindset, I can learn how to manage people, I can learn how to manage systems, I can learn how to manage ideas. Fixed, this is the best it's going to get. Growth, I can improve my personal and professional life. Fixed, I can't do a headstand. I can learn how to do a headstand even when I'm 9 months pregnant, right? So when we think about that fixed growth piece, what we're really looking at is our own ability to take control of the situation, our own ability to take radical responsibility for the way we navigate our world. So what I'm going to do now is give you guys a little bit of fun practice around this. So I'm going to get you guys to lean into thinking a little bit about what it means to work with your mindset. So how do we get stuck, right? One of the things that Andy said is that we have the power to learn and transform. So one of the quotes that I love on this is from Henry Ford: whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. Right? Whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right, right? So it's basically, we believe what we think, right? So, you know, are you creating the right conditions? And one of the ways that we often get stuck is that we base our future selves on what we've achieved in the past. We base our future selves on our skill set. We base our future selves on comparisonitis. Like, you know, like Charmaine was saying, you know, when you find yourself getting sucked into that, you know, affirmations, mantras, like getting into a space of reminding yourself on a daily basis that you can prune the neurological wiring in your brain, right? And then the other thing just to remember as a human is that evolutionarily we are designed to focus on what's not working. It's called the negativity bias, right? We are designed to, we're still in an evolutionary space where we're designed to see what is failing as a way of keeping us safe. Right? So when you kind of step back and you go, oh, thank you, brain, you're just trying to protect me. When you go, this is how you've effed up today. This is all the things you've done wrong. This is all the things you haven't achieved, right? When you go into that, it's like, thank you, brain. I appreciate that, that perspective, but I'm going to step into a place of recognizing what I have achieved, what I have done, or what, as my friend Carly made this for me, what I get to do every day, right? What I get to do rather than what I have to do, right? So what I want you to write down now, because this is the powerful kicker when it comes to mindset. The beliefs you have about yourself are simply decisions that you have made. Let me say that again. The beliefs you have about yourself are simply decisions that you have made, right? So that's like, yay, but then it's like, oh God, like it's all up to me, right? It's like, yay, I have the power to change it, but oh, what have I done, right? Now it's all up to me. So again, I want you to write this down. Your beliefs create your thoughts. Your thoughts create your feelings. Your feelings create your actions. And your actions create your results. Your results affirm your beliefs. So let me do that again. You have a belief. Your belief creates a thought. Your thought creates a feeling. The feeling creates an action. The action creates a result. The result reaffirms the belief, right? So this is we are psychocybernetic mechanisms. So what is a cybernetic mechanism? I bet you those people there in engineering, I forget her name, is it Heidi, who like that, I bet would be like way better explain this, but I'm just going to give you like a very superficial explanation of a cybernetic mechanism, which is your thermostat, right? It responds to feedback in the environment. You set it for 70 degrees, it gets to 75, the air conditioning turns on. It drops to 60, the heater turns on, right? So it's always trying to bring it back, and it's taking information from the external environment. So we are psycho-cybernetic. We have this interplay with our psycho, like that's the mind, right? The thoughts, the internal practices. And that process, this loop, is where we can get stuck. So what I want you to take on board is that you have the power to change this with this process of neurosculpting. You can change your beliefs. So we're going to do a little bit of neurosculpting right now. What I want you to do, and I'm going to give you a couple minutes to journal, and then I'm going to get you guys into breakout rooms again. Do you want to admire, by the way, I'm wearing RBG earrings. These are not her descent. These are my favorite ones. I bought them at the RBG exhibit last week at the Maltz Museum here in Cleveland. I'm very excited about it. I felt like I had to acknowledge it given what the day is. So we're going to go through a process of mindset reshifting, neurosculpting. And I want you to write down 4 columns. Column 1, negative belief. Column 2, reframed belief, so positive belief. Column 3, evidence. Column 4, emotion. So 4 columns, right? Column 1, negative belief. Column 2, positive affirmation, positive reframe of it. Column 3, evidence. And column 4, the emotions. So a very basic example might be, I'm not lovable, right? After I got divorced, right? I'm not lovable. Positive, I am lovable. Evidence, my children love me, my parents love me, my friends love me. They tell me on a regular basis they love me. Emotion, when I think about what it is to feel loved and to feel like I am deeply loved by people, I feel joyful, I feel calm, I feel positive, I feel resourceful, I feel energetic, I smile, right? So that's that emotional frame that we want to tie to our reprogramming. So I want you to take a moment to write down a negative belief that you have about yourself that you repeat on a daily basis. And it's the one that always, maybe it's the I'm a failure. That's one that I've had to work on a lot. I'm a failure. Like when things don't work out, that's just, they don't work out because I'm a failure. That's just who I am, right? Or I'm not successful. Or I'm only ever going to make this much money. Or I'm only ever going to live in this kind of place, right? And the thing that you find yourself repeating again and again, write the reframe, look for the evidence, and then describe the emotions you feel when you're in that positive state. I'm going to give you guys 4 minutes to do that. Like really dig into it, because this is where the rubber hits the road. This is where the change will really happen or not happen. So take out your pens. I'm going to check the chat. Thanks, Theo, for the Let's give you 2 more minutes and then we'll go into breakout rooms. Let's do breakout rooms of 3 to 4 people for about 4 minutes. That'll take us to about 7:30. Is that okay? Awesome. All right, Theo, do you want to put people into breakout rooms?
Yeah, will you say it? What's the instructions for the breakout rooms? What are
So
we
in the
doing?
breakout rooms, I want them to talk about it in the room, just to break it down a little bit, you know, open up about it and think a little bit about what it means, you know, whether they're willing to do the work,
Perfect,
whether
thank you.
you're willing to look under the hood, right?
Enjoy, here you guys go.
Well done, well done. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate you doing that. So what you were doing there is you were starting the process of neurosculpting. And the one way to imagine it is almost to think of your brain and the neurological connections as like a rose, right? And if you let all of the energy go out, you're not going to have a beautiful bloom. So what you do is you go in there and you prune, so the energy is focused in particular directions, right? So that positive one that you've just written down, to really make the change, I want you to write it in your journal 3 times a day. I want you to record it on the voice memo on your phone and listen to yourself say it 3 times a day. I want you to grab that red lipstick like I'm wearing tonight and write it on the bathroom mirror, right? And just make it happen, right? So this is how you do it, is you just keep affirming it. You keep leaning into it until you believe that this is what is going to happen. This is who you are. This is how you engage in the world. All right? All right, so that's the second of the 3 main keys to unleashing your vision. So the third is the third piece I touched on in my introduction, which we're going to end on this evening, which is vision. And articulating your vision is really, really vital. If you don't create a vision for your life and walk your path, you are likely to be pushed into doing things that your society, family, you're going to be should on, right? I talk about that a lot. I'm like, let's get rid of the masturbation. Like the whole, like, I must do this because my mother did this, right? I must do this because women do this. I must do that. Should, like, let's get rid of the shoulds too, right? You need to articulate your life your way. So what is a vision? A vision is a declaration of your objectives intended to guide your internal decision making. A declaration of your objectives, nobody else's, intended to guide your internal decision making, right? So when do you do this? Often we do this at New Year's, right? It's like New Year's resolution. I'm going to like revisit, reevaluate. Sometimes we do it when we start a new job, or we have a big transition, like we graduate or we start a new degree program. I like to do it at my birthday too, right? Or are you somebody that never does it? So the interesting thing about visions, and when you look at the statistics on people who take the time to articulate their vision and think about it and go through it, the statistics are kind of scary. Only about 20% of the population takes time to reflect on their vision and their goals. Only about 4% of people write that down, and only 1% check back in. 20% reflect on it, 4% write it down, and 1% check back in. So the question is, are you willing to be that 1%? Are you willing to be the person who's going to take the time to reflect on your vision? Are you going to be part of that 4% who writes it down? Are you going to be part of that 1% who actually looks what they wrote down, and goes back in and checks on it and reevaluates it based on the degree you have, based on where you're now living, based on the relationship you're now in, based on the experiences you've had, based on a talk that you went to that inspired the crap out of you and made you think, actually, I want to live a completely different life than the life I've been living, right? So are you willing to do that? Is my first question. So in the chat, give me a yes or a no if you are not willing. Are you willing to articulate a big juicy vision for your life? Are you willing to step in there and say, this is up to me? This is not up to anybody else. This, yes, Paige, yes, we're getting some yeses. This is up to me to take charge. This is up to me. It's within, I get to define my life on my terms. I get to write the script for my life. I get to have radical responsibility for my own personal experiences. Yeah. All right. So what I want you to do now, because this is just fun and you've been sitting on your butts for a long time, is I want you to just close your eyes for 30 seconds and think, what tangible object in my personal space that I can grab within 30 seconds represents the vision I have for my life? So there, sit there for 30 seconds with your eyes closed and think, what object in my space right now represents the vision that I have for my life? And then get up and go and get it and bring it back. Go. Run and grab it. Grab the thing that represents your life vision. And it's also good to get up and move. You know, the more you sit on your butt, the bigger your butt gets. Like it breaks down the tissue, the butt tissue, in like a not attractive way. And your liver stops functioning as well when you sit too long. So yeah, get up and move around. Yay. All right. People have been moving around and grabbing items. All right, I'm seeing a few empty cameras still, so hopefully people are running around and looking for something fun. I love it. All right, now who would like to share their item and why it represents the vision of their life? So please unmute and share. Theo, if you could spotlight them next to me. Anybody? Anybody willing to share?
We can stop the recording for this if you want.
I can go ahead and
like
go
tap
first.
a vibrator or something fun, something naughty. Oh, it's recording. Cool.
I have a pen.
All right, who's going to share? Paige, you going to share?
I
hear someone in
the
the back.
Who is it?
Prudence.
There we go.
I can go.
So, I have a pen here.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll say that I cannot be erased.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. And you get to write your own script.
Yes.
Yes.
I get to write my own narrative because I have the power right here in my hands.
You do. I love it. Oh, that's beautiful, Prudence. Thank you for sharing. That was wonderful. I appreciate it.
There was at least one other person that they were willing to share.
I think Kristen.
Yep, me, yeah. So I grabbed the Salt, Fat, Acid, Heat cookbook because I really, really want to learn how to cook and how to cook well. And that's just, it's a big passion of mine and I'm really getting into it. And this has given me some knowledge to do that and to run with it.
I love it. So what's the concrete commitment that you're going to make with that? Give me one.
Well, I've started doing like a recipe like every weekend from the book to just try it out and
love it.
And then with some good recipes and then with some bad ones, but you know, at least I'm trying.
I love it. I love it. Oh, that's great, Kristen. Thank you for sharing. I appreciate it so much. Yay.
Definitely.
I'm a big foodie too. I love cooking and food. I'm one of those people who embarrass the crap out of my kids when I'm in a restaurant. I'm like, this is so good. I took my daughter out for ice cream today because I was like, we have to celebrate. International Women's Day with ice cream, obviously. Yay, thank you, Kristen. Anybody else want to share? Paige, did you have something?
Yeah, it's funny because I'm in my office, so I don't have too much around me. It's pretty bare.
Mhm.
But I did grab something off my keychain, and this is actually thanks to Barbara. And she'd sent me a keychain when I graduated, and it says, "Great leaders inspire greatness in others." And that is something that is my why statement. And I think that's why I keep going, is just because even when I was in my last breakout room, hearing that this event is changing people's mindset is what keeps me going and what keeps me doing what I'm doing and going towards something new. So
yeah,
that is definitely part of my why statement, is it's inspiring others. And it's coincidental that I had my keychain next to me. So shout out to Barbara, or else I wouldn't have had anything handy.
I love it. I love it. Yay. Thank you all. So I just want to quickly wrap up now. And then I know you're going to go into the award ceremony. So really, to unleash your vision, I think I want you to, the biggest takeaway I want you to have is that you have the power, and don't let anybody else tell you that you don't. Daily habits, really important to get on top of your habits, right? As I said, or actually no, as Paige said in my introduction, we make 35,000 decisions every day, right? So if you can create some automation between the habits that serve you, between the things that you do in a repeated way, like whether it's meal planning, whether it's working out at the same time every day, whether it's like Mark Zuckerberg or Obama wearing the same color shirt every day. Like, where can you create some automation in your daily habits to reduce the daily decisions? Because we've all got the same 24 hours in the day. So if you can create that automation, it frees up some of that space in your mind, right? The second is to really lean into the power of mindset, right? You have great power to change your mental habits, to change the way you think about yourself. And when you lean into the piece around the navigating your relationships with other people, the more you lean into strong mental habits and create healthy boundaries, the stronger you'll become and the more productive you'll become. And one of the ways I like to talk about it with my clients is, be diligent about gathering the data on your life and using that to guide your life, right? What qualitative data and what quantitative data can you use to guide your decisions? So what do I mean by that? Quantitative data, what's the number on the scale? What's the number in my bank account? What are the hours it says I'm on my phone every day, right? What are the actual concrete numbers, right? And then the qualitative, like, how do I feel about these things? When I'm in this community, do I feel energized? Do I feel warm? Do I feel positive? Or do I feel drained and like depleted being around these people, right? When I'm doing this kind of work, do I get excited or do I think, oh, right? So really leaning into that idea that Andy articulated of the strengths, right? And like Charmaine was saying, when you know what you're good at, lean into that, right? My word for 2021 is delegate, and I have it on my little intention wristband here, because my goal this year in my business is to delegate the crap that I don't enjoy doing, right? And that is not in my wheel of expertise, right? And stop thinking that I need to do things that I don't need to do in my business and hire it out, right? So get really clear about that. And then really leaning into that bigger vision, like what's pulling you forward? Like I call that the telescope of your life, right? If you have a vision of hiking up Machu Picchu when you get to 25, when you get to 30, when your kids graduate college, if you've got some big juicy vision that's part of your life plan, and then you take a step back with the microscope and you look at your daily habits and think, well, I'm sitting on the sofa watching Bridgerton, scrolling through Instagram, buying Spark t-shirts and eating popcorn and donuts. That doesn't really tie in, right? Because to hike up Peru, Machu Picchu, which I've done, you need 2 weeks off, right? Because you got to deal with the altitude. You need money to get there. You need to have the job flexibility that allows you 2 weeks off, right? You need to also be healthy enough to be able to handle that kind of physical exertion, right? So when you play with this telescope, microscope of your life, you can create a spectacular life and unleash your vision. And then one thing that I want you to really lean into here as well is to be really, really clear around navigating the shoulds, right? So we get very sucked into, and it's amazing the time we live in, but social media. So I really want you to take note and curate your feed. If you're on Instagram and every time you come off Instagram, you feel like crap because you're only looking at super skinny models who don't look like you, stop following those people, right? Just get rid of them, right? If you are always hanging out with people who make you feel bad about yourself, stop hanging out with those people, right? You're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So who are you spending the most time with, right? My goal is always to be the least smart person in the room so that I can elevate myself. Like that's a personal goal I have, is I always try to throw myself into a situation where I know little and I can absorb the intelligence and brilliance of those around me. So that, again, lean into that board of directors, find those mentors and help recruit them to lift you up and support you. So that's me. I don't know if anyone has any Q&A for me. I'm going to post a link in the chat for you all, which is a free bit.ly link for the 10 mistakes most people make when they're creating new habits. I'm also happy to be emailed. I'm also on Facebook a lot, which I know probably you youngies are like, Facebook, that's where old farts hang out. But I hang out on Facebook a lot, do a lot of Facebook lives. I'm also on Instagram and on LinkedIn. So follow me there, find me there. And I'm an open book, as you've probably already realized. So please feel free to ask me any questions.
And I know people probably have a million questions based off of everything we just said. If one person wants to chime in with one and then go utilize all the resources, Facebook, Instagram, that Tamsin just put out, I do want to make sure I can get to the scholarships and get you guys awarded. So does anyone have just one really good question that they want answered right this second?
No pressure at all.
No pressure. Okay. Well, if no one's jumping to the opportunity, I will let you all marinate on that hour of wonderful information that we had. Please feel free to reach out. I've already learned so much from Tamsin and the few conversations that we've had. So I'm sure that every single one of us could take a million more things away from her. So thank you so much for that. And then as she kind of said, we're going to go into the scholarship. So I hope you guys are excited. You guys have been able to learn how to break your glass ceiling. You've seen the obstacles and now you know how to unleash your vision. We're going to talk about women leaders on BGSU's campus. And obviously there's a bunch of women leaders in this chat right now, but we have created the Ally to Women Scholarship Fund to recognize the women leads on campus that are proving each and every day why we work towards breaking those social and gender barriers. And what I'm going to do is share my screen, making sure that I hide the winners. So as you all know, it is International Women's Day, like we've said a million times, but we want to celebrate not only the women that are in this call, but all 290 applicants to the scholarship fund. And we were absolutely blown away by all the individuals that reached out and completed that. And there's a variety of organizations that believed in these scholarships and reached out directly in support of these. And on top of the conference partners that we have talked about, we have 7 scholarship partners. So there's general and specified, and we were able to bring over $5,000 to the table to give out 8 scholarships. I don't know if anyone was here from the beginning and signed up, but originally the plan was $2,500, but people kept reaching out and really believing in the mission of this scholarship. So there's 2 additional 250-word essay questions on diversity and inclusion and the involvement there, as well as your personal definition of a woman leader. So with those over 290 applicants, we're excited to announce the winners, but I'm just going to touch on these 4 general partners and I'll go a little bit deeper that way. So first is Baz Group, is a seasoned expert in global telecommunications, enabling industry leaders to position themselves for convergence of technology, data, and artificial intelligence with aspects of business. By identifying and managing the true costs and benefits of their network and telecom services, they enable companies with multiple locations and remote teams to fulfill their growth strategies and profitability. They wrest costs out of this process and get most of the communications spend all on them. And then on top of that, we have the computer science department at BGSU, which is actually the first computer science department in Ohio and was established in 1969. And for 50 years, they've prepared many accomplished alumni to work in many capacities throughout the industry, and their program continues to grow. And in recent years, they saw nearly a 50% increase in student enrollment, and they're developing new majors and specializations to attract even more quality students to fulfill the market needs. And then to build off of that, Northwest Ohio ACMW is a professional chapter that encourages men and women to participate in ACM's mission to foster increased knowledge and greater interest in science, design, development, construction, languages, management, and applications of modern computing. Providing a means of communication between persons and having an interest in computing, ACMW supports, celebrates, and advocates internationally for the full engagement of women in all aspects of the computing field, providing a wide range of programs and services to all ACM members and working in a larger community to advance the contributions of technical women. And lastly, we have the College of Technology, Architecture, and Applied Engineering programs, which are among the fastest growing at BGSU. Within the college, every student completes a series of co-ops providing real world experiences and employers that employers are seeking. And within the 10 undergraduate majors and 8 graduate programs, the College of Technology, Architecture, and Applied Engineering programs continues to produce successful alumni that continue to change the world. And an even more special thank you to Dr. Janine Gallimore and the Dean of the College for the support of this event. So with that being said, let's get to the presentation of the scholarships. And first, we're going to start out with the Stellar Academic and Career Achievement Award. And these individuals not only fight for equity inside and outside the workplace, but have been involved in initiatives to break social norms and continually pushes the standards for academic and career achievement on BGSU's campus. This award is specifically sponsored by Whitney Taylor, a design manager at Google and YouTube in San Francisco, overseeing teams that focus on new ways to create and engage their fans to grow an audience with posts, stories, and social. Prior to this, she designed New Words with Friends and tackled projects at E! Entertainment Television and Nickelodeon. She's an Ohio native and a 2009 Bowling Green State University graduate. She studied visual communication technology and played on the women's basketball team. Some of her BGSU accolades included a commencement speaker, summa cum laude, senior female athlete of the year, and she also completed a master's of fine arts in interactive design at Savannah College of Arts and Design. So with that being said, I want to congratulate our 2 winners, Kaylee Putoff and Kaylee Riemann, for being exemplary women leaders here on BGSU's campus. We want to thank you both for being here. I know I've seen you both in breakout rooms, and both of those awards are 100% deserved, and we thank you so much for participating and applying. And if I had the constant reaction of this, I would consistently keep it on for the next 10 minutes. And then, as well as that, we had the Community and University Involvement Award. And with that, these 2 students have been able to break glass ceilings as women leaders on campus, but also been able to give back and staying involved on and off campus. This award is sponsored by Melissa Ackman, who is a Senior Associate Vice President of Human Resources and a proud policyholder at Nationwide Insurance. Melissa's HR career spans over 20 years, including the last 15 with Nationwide. She currently serves as an executive human resource business partner for the Office of Strategy and Corporate Development and the Office of Chief Consumer, where she is responsible for delivering people strategies that link human capital to strategic business results through the HR disciplines like talent management, leader and organizational effectiveness, change management, and HR analytics culture. Melissa received her undergraduate degree from BG and her graduate degree in labor and human resources from The Ohio State University. She holds a senior professional in human resources and a senior certified professional designations, and is an active member in the Women's Leadership Council through the United Way of Central Ohio, and sits on the Bowling Green State University College of Business Leadership Council and its advisory board for insurance. And she also resides in Dublin, Ohio. And with no further ado, I want to congratulate 2 women leaders on campus that have really taken the scholarship and made it their own, and that is Han Wen and Madison Bannister. So congratulations to both of you, and thank you so much for all of your efforts, and we encourage you to keep going forward and being the great woman leader that you are. And then for the last 2 $500 awards, It is a Stellar Diversity and Inclusion Advocate Award. This award fights for diversity and inclusion on and off campus, on top of defining what it means to be a young woman leader, breaking barriers each and every day. And we know not every woman looks the same, and there's some differences between us. And these two advocates really have fought for that, and especially within their application have shown that. So this award is presented by Marathon Petroleum Corporation, and Marathon is a leading integrated downstream energy company headquartered in Findlay, Ohio. And the company operates the nation's largest refining system with more than 3 million barrels per day of crude oil and a capacity of 16 refineries. Marathon has a long-established core values of safety, of environmental stewardship, integrity, respect, inclusion, and collaboration. And they really, really loved being a part of being a sponsor for this event. And with that being said, the two winners of this award are Kelsey Worster and Christina Morales. So thank you so much for fighting for diversity and inclusion, among many other fights that we have as women on a daily basis. And we appreciate everything you guys do. And lastly, we had our Allied to Women Scholarship with the overall award. The recipients of this scholarship combine all of the previous tiers, and these women will receive a $1,000 award for their efforts as a woman leader on campus. And I want to congratulate Madeline Merchant and Claire Regal for both receiving this award. And you both exemplify what it means to be a woman leader on BGSU's campus. And we cannot wait to see what you have to accomplish at your time at BG. And overall, I really just want to congratulate not only our scholarship winners, but all that applied and everybody in this Zoom right now, because the way that we've all been able to come together during this call, the energy created, as well as all of the outreach between now and when I had started this 9 months ago, we're able to celebrate women properly on BGSU's campus like we've never before seen. And hopefully this time next year, we'll be able to do it in person. So a round of applause for all of our scholarship recipients, because thank you so much. And then with that being said, I do have a couple more thank yous as we're wrapping up our last 5 minutes. Barbara has been a great advisor for women in business leadership, as well as a great mentor to myself, but she also has been able to really keep this event on track and been able to really pull all of our heads together. I want to say a special shout out to Madison Suffalo. She's in this call right now. She has been our social media marketer, has been part of the reason that a lot of you have found out about this event, gotten the updates, and she's done a fantastic job. And I couldn't appreciate her more as part of my board of directors, as well as someone who's really been an advocate for the event. The Women in Business Leadership Executive Board has stepped up again and again to really help when there's been holes. As a program director, there's been times that things have popped up that I've used their expertise and I couldn't thank them enough. And then the conference promotional team, they've worked day and night to try to get this all around the university's campus, especially during a pandemic. It's not as easy as everyone thinks to get in everyone's emails, but I thank them for everything that they've done. And then all of the organizations that I've mentioned at the beginning of the conference, all the advisors, the exec board members, and the members themselves. We appreciate everything you guys do. And we loved working with you the whole entire time. And then I don't know if they're still in here, but Carly DeGroot and Brady Gaskins have worked endlessly to get our funding for this event, our scholarships up, and everything in between. And then lastly, thank all of you guys for attending. You guys made this event something that we've been dreaming about for a couple of years, and it's finally put into action. So thank you so much for everything. You guys are free to go to for the night. I know the Bachelor finale is on in 3 minutes, so I knew to make sure it was done by 8 o'clock. But if you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, even just want to have a conversation about the conference, what you'd like to see, or if you want to be involved in planning this in the future, please reach out to me. This is my email. I'm always available for questions. So thank you guys so much. Have a great night and happy International Women's Day.